to veto at any cost.
GOP Congressman and U.S. Air National Guard pilot Lieutenant Colonel Adam Kinzinger is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He joins us now to react. Congressman, Lieutenant Colonel, thank you for your service. You just spent a couple of weeks down at the border for your as service. Tell us what you saw down there.
Look, I support the emergency declaration because when I went out there, there's a lot of immigration issues. We saw a lot of groups coming across the border illegally, but we saw a lot of drugs. We saw a lot of human trafficking. I've seen it. By the way, I've done 3 prior border deployments, all under President Obama. Okay, so it was never controversial under President Obama. With President Trump, we went down there. One of my crews, 70 pounds of meth on their very first mission they pulled. I found a woman that was hunkered down in the desert that was abandoned by her coyotes, the drug cartel that would bring her over and abandon them at any sign of trouble. This was all over the place, so I support. I got to tell you one thing that really bothers me, and I'm never one that really comes on TV and ever gets angry because I like to stay calm. But I found out when I was leaving the border in Tucson that the governor of Wisconsin, and this is going to make news because he hasn't even announced it because I don't think he has the courage to do it because I don't think Wisconsin would support it. The governor of Wisconsin, I heard from the Tucson sector, has pulled all his guard troops now out of the Tucson sector. And I'm curious about something. I'm curious if the governor of Wisconsin ever bothered to go down and see what his men and women were doing in the border to support Border Patrol and to protect the Wisconsin community. Because when I was there, he never showed up. He never showed up, and he would have seen the drugs that we took off the street. He would have seen the people that we rescued in the desert, and he would have seen his helicopters moving Border Patrol into rough areas to apprehend people that otherwise they would have to walk 2 or 3 miles in. This is the Democratic view of border security. They say that we want technology, we want to empower Border Patrol, and they pull the National Guard out despite having done it under President Obama. It's sickening.
Congressman, you went down there indifferent. You said, I want to see what, you've been there before. You didn't really know what you were going to find. You came back converted. This is an emergency. You know what? The governor of New Mexico says it's not. Says it's a trumped-up situation. Is she lying?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I think she's looking at it through her view of politics, which is the only thing that matters right now. They cannot admit that President Trump says anything that makes sense. And so when he says build a wall, they're like, we don't like a wall, we like technology. Okay, fine, you don't like a wall, you like technology, then why in the name of heaven would you ever pull out the National Guard out of New Mexico? Or why would the governor of Wisconsin pull him out of Arizona when that is exactly the kind of technology you claim you support? They don't. And then they say it's all about the ports of entry, and I agree the ports of entry are an issue. It's the active duty forces that are actually hardening the point of entry, which is what the Democrats are calling for, but then they say these active duty forces are completely worthless. It is completely disingenuous from the left on this.
How much easier would your job have been, and would it have been as necessary if there was actual physical structures? Call them walls, call them barriers, call them what you want. How much would that improve the situation?
I am so glad you asked that. But let me tell you why. I never worked an area in Arizona that had a wall. There are some areas with walls, but the area that we had to go look at were areas that didn't have walls because that's where people were coming over. The Democrats will say, look at the terrain in Arizona. It's hard to traverse. There's a lot of mountains. There are. Guess where we did the majority of our looking for coyotes and drug mules? On the mountains. Guess where it was the hardest for the Border Patrol to insert to capture these people? On the mountains. That is why a wall is necessary. So don't listen to the rhetoric of the left.
Wait,
because
so clarify that, even on mountains, even rough terrain, you think a physical barrier would be useful to slow down the flow?
I think where you can do it, or if you can do it in front of accessing that, but don't let people tell you that mountains or rough terrain prevents people from coming over. It's going to be the exact people that are bringing the drugs and the human trafficking over that are going to use that route because they know Border Patrol has just as hard of a time.
So 56 former national security so-called experts, 58, have weighed in to a letter to the president saying there's no reason for an emergency. There's no apprehensions are down 40% of the border. This is a ruse, including Chuck Hagel, a Republican, Susan Rice, big shocker, James Clapper, big shocker. What's your response to that?
Well, I disagree. Some of it's a judgment call. If this was just an immigration issue, I probably would also agree it doesn't rise to the level of an emergency declaration. But this is drugs. This is human trafficking. And the reason partially that the border apprehensions are down, if it's true, is because these people understand now how to abuse American asylum laws. So they're just walking to points of entry, and instead of declaring asylum in Mexico where they should, they're basically taking their pick of where they want to live for the rest of their life, and it's not right.
And anybody that knows you know that you would also come on here and say, after my 2 weeks, my feeling is, if it was the other way, you'd be saying the same exact thing. So thanks so much.
I'm not afraid to say what I believe.
Right, so they pulled you off, now you're back for your other job. Congressman, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your service, too.
See you.